Every revolutionary act is an act of love. And this is an act of love.
Huge thanks to the three of you who applauded my name. This is about me. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm a theater maker and a comedy maker, and I have a podcast and blah, blah, blah. I also have a kid and a lot of stress from all those things. But I'm not going to talk about me. I want to talk about these four amazing people on stage and how they exist as humans and creative people and business people and all of that. So hopefully we will get them all engaged in a discussion and then make some space for questions as well at the end. So as they're talking, start thinking of those questions because that's your job later on in this hour. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel, and you can applaud for them or be silent and make them feel bad. It's up to you. So immediately to my left is LaPae, who is here out of New York, which that in itself is amazing. He flew in this morning. And he's a rapper, a master barber, a music producer, model, an actor, and you have a brand new book coming out in November.
Yes.
Homeless with a Record Deal.
The Moments of Luxury.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to read that and really excited to talk to you. Next to kNERO is, I already asked you how to pronounce your name, I'm gonna mess it up. Tricia.
Don't read it.
Khutoretsky?
Yeah.
I'm a hero, I'm gonna take off. That's right, that's right. More applause for me. And you're curator and director of Public Functionary. And you were in Minneapolis St. Paul Business Journal's 40 Under 40 this year. Congratulations. Young and talented. And one of the things I read in descriptions of you is you are interested in using art as a means of making positive change in the world. So I'm excited to get into that. And then next to you is Roger Grothe. And Roger is the founder of Aloha Landscaping Company. You're also an industrial psychologist for years and years. You wrote a children's book about green energy. I think one of the first children's books about green energy. And so you have your own business, and you also know how people's brains work. So I think we'll all have questions about that and how you can use that to your advantage. And at the far end of the panel is Mr. Art Allen.
Oh, you said it right. Good.
That's right, I nailed it. Hardest name up here. And Art has a company called Modern Antics, which is an experiential event company, is the description I'll use. He's created something called Pundemonium, which is a pun slam competition. He has a riddle room where you are inside of a spaceship and you're trying to solve puzzles to escape the spaceship or defeat the monster, depending on when you ask him. He also started the Minnesota Beard Off, which is a beard competition. That's a real thing. Art takes weird ideas and makes them real and somehow profitable. So I'm really excited for all four of you guys to be here. So clap for them now. That's what I want. So my first question for all of you, and we can go down the row or however we want to do that, is this is sort of focused on balancing work and life and having those two things. So pretty big picture, my question is, how do you guys think of your work and your life? Do you think of them as two separate entities? Do they meld together in some ways? Is it important for you to try to keep those two things separate? What do you consider your work? What do you consider the rest of your life? And how do they intersect?
For me, I'm still trying to dissect that. I get help by my wife because when I'm in the studio, I have a studio in my house. So when I'm in the studio, she will barge in when I'm in there too much. So then she would let me know family time. So I can get caught up in my creativity and get lost into that world and not understanding that I have my 3 kids and my wife in the other room that needs me at times, you know what I mean? So I'm still trying to understand the balance of my career and my life. I'm still young, so deal with me.
You'll get it eventually.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope so.
Tricia, what do you got?
I think it's about the same for me. A lot of creative entrepreneurs think about their life and work as together because I don't go to a structured environment 9 to 5. I work all hours of the night, of the day, weekends. There's really no separation that I can define. When I talk about my occupation, I'm an art curator. So I guess when I'm curating, I'm working. But I'm probably curating all the time. According to everybody around me, I'm pretty critical and judgmental of aesthetics and things around me. So yeah, it's a blurred line. And sometimes I think that's problematic. If I maybe knew how to compartmentalize it more, I could find the boundaries.
Yeah, it surrounds you. I mean, when you're involved in basically a construction business, and we are involved in a lot of other pursuits, they all have kind of threads running through them, but we're kind of on 24/7, 365. That's kind of our mantra. We do a lot of work in a lot of different locations. We're doing some projects in Guam right now, so our day with them starts at 5 o'clock at night, and we just do it. You know, it's something, but because there's a passion and energy, I mean, you just do it, and then your family has to kind of give you a heads up when you're getting too far into it. Yep.
Art?
Yeah, I mean, I am lucky in that I have an actual store where the Riddle Room is located that is work, and I do all of my work there. And sometimes I'm there for like all day and all night. And sometimes my family has to come visit me at my store because I can't leave, because I am like serving customers by facilitating a Riddle Room experience, hosting. And that's actually how we spent Mother's Day. My wife and child came.
That was very telling, just
yeah. My wife and child came, and we had our Mother's Day picnic in the lobby of my store because I couldn't leave.
very romantic.
Yeah, and I would, that's probably about as separate as I can get the two. Like my wife is very supportive and integral to, like, is involved in just about every decision-making process I make, not as a vote necessarily, but just as a sounding board. And so, like, any point, it has been vetted through her. So it's family and work are pretty thoroughly integrated. I'm always talking about it, even though I have this space where I try to keep my work.
Your family keeps mucking it up, coming in there.
Yeah. Family is it's an industry term called dead weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tricia, you used the word compartmentalize, which I think is pretty significant. I think that there's this idea of having spaces where this thing happens and that thing happens, and we understand that sort of in maybe where we live, like, hey, bedroom, kitchen, like it's all really well established, although I totally mix those spaces up. Not with bathrooms, but that's weird. But I'm curious if all of you think there's some value in compartmentalizing to a certain degree, or if you are seeing advantages, are your personal relationships informing the work and the way you do the work that you do? Like Roger, I know you have family who works with you, correct? So I would imagine there's some pros and cons to that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's very challenging. I mean, we've always had our kids. We have 4 kids, and I'm much older than most of you here, so I've kind of lived through a time when we really compartmentalized things, and then as our kids got older and they started getting involved in our business in a pretty serious way, then it's just like all hands on deck. It's like, like a modern day farming scenario where everybody's doing something, whether we're doing a project at the Mall of America, or if we're going to Florida doing a job, or we're doing something locally here and we need someone with an artistic flair. Well, we have a son who's an artist and he's a sculptor. Well, guess what? You're doing a sculpture at this property in Aspen, Colorado. And it works, but it is very trying as a family because you can be probably the hardest on each other. And that's, that can be very tricky to manage. Because we've had a lot of family businesses in previous generations, and it can be horrific. I mean, some of the things that can happen in family businesses, I mean, it generally, is just very complex, and you treat each other a lot different than you're going to treat your customers or clients or colleagues. you know, you don't have some of those filters. So my daughter just turned 21. She's the baby of the family, and we took her out, and I said, well, now you're officially part of our gang. And I said, our gang we don't commit crimes against humanity. We commit crimes against each other and against common sense. And there's a lot of, you know, she laughed and we all thought it was funny, but it's like we're tough on each other, but you know, we just really fight to mend the fences. And businesses have a tendency to, and endeavors, creative endeavors especially, you know, you just got to manage that constantly.
Yeah, I'm curious for you, Nero. You're as a musician, some of your work speaks about your personal life a fair amount, and then you have this book that is about you and the people in your world. So I wonder how much you think about those personal relationships and how much you're able to be, you know, Reggie mentioned being authentic and being honest in your work. Do you have to make decisions about when to be open and honest about somebody else, or is it not really an option?
To me, I feel I have to be honest to myself. So once I be honest to myself, the honesty will flow through my creativity. So I have my son's gonna be 13 on Sunday, and he's old enough to pay attention to what's going on. He watches my every move, hang off my every word. So when I'm making these music, I don't make those turn up type music, as we would say in hip hop, because to me it's considered ratchet. So I will make type of music that will stick to everybody. I want my music to be timeless. So with that being said, my son is paying attention. So at the same time, I don't want to lie to him. I can make something that's not me, and he's gonna pay attention to that and most likely question it. And now, me as a parent, he's not gonna look up to me. My main goal is to keep my influence on my children, because I don't want them to be influenced by the society that's being corrupted.
That's a big challenge, to try and protect someone else from society.
Yes, it is, but I feel don't get me wrong, I'm not Superman. But I'm gonna try my best to keep the influence that I have now on my son as much as possible. I'm from West Africa, Liberia, and when my parents came to the States with us, my older brother and I, my two little sisters are the first generation born in America. My father, he's the man right now. I look up to him, I tip my hat up to that guy. But growing up, he wasn't too cool to me because he was a foreigner. So I was mostly indulged into the street life, hip hop, things of that nature. So what I was seeing from him was corny. He's educated. So it wasn't the thing to be to me. So that influence was never there. He wasn't into what I was into. So he didn't capture me in that sense. But me being Nero right now, everything that I do, I capture my son. He sees everything. He asks me what's in my iPod, what sneakers I'm wearing, things like that. He wants to be me. So as long as I can keep that influence on my son and the rest of my children, I feel I can be that Superman that I think I can be.
I wonder if that helps you stay accountable then too, to have integrity. Not that you wouldn't on your own, but that you know someone's watching that closely.
Definitely. That's what makes it so hard for me to create music. Because, for instance, artists like Prince, they don't put out albums all the time because they are staying truthful to themselves. When Prince came out as the artist formerly known as, he was going through a bad process with the record label, Warner Brothers. So he was staying true to himself because the record labels owned the name Prince. So he stood true to himself and came out with the name artist formerly known as because he wanted that project for himself, but the record label didn't want no parts of that. So him being true to himself, he put it under a different name and a name that the record label did not own. So me personally, I have to stay true to myself.
Tricia, I know with Public Functionary, that was you started that with somebody else, right?
I started it with a team of support,
of the people. And is there a certain degree of personal relationships that led to you making that space?
Yeah, it was creatives that I had been working with for a couple years, but were not necessarily my friends. We've become really good friends as a result of working together for the past 3 years, but I had previous business endeavors, creative endeavors that I started when I was much younger, and I started them with friends, and they all failed. So I think there's just a level of, you think you can go into business with your friends, and it can get really messy. So going into public functionary, it was important for me not to immediately just work with who I thought I could trust or who I thought would be the best people to work with. And hopefully you can become friends with the people that you're working with. But yeah, that's something that I've had to learn the hard way.
Well, then is there a risk then if you start with people who are colleagues or acquaintances and then you become friends and then do the same challenges arise that you had from starting things from friendship? Can that be a risk? I ask for all of you guys, if you work with someone long enough, often a friendship comes out of that,
Yeah.
which seems great, but are there downsides or challenges from that relationship?
Yeah, I think that when you're working in these types of projects, they're really passion driven and you're on this hustle and you're working all the time around the clock, so you become very close to these people and they become your friends, and then it's harder to find, you let things slide a little bit more. You're like, well, I know what they're going through at home right now. So if it was a regular business setting, you might not, it wouldn't matter. HR can deal with it. So yeah, it's tricky.
Well, I know you in your strange live events, you'll have someone come and host it or facilitate it, who you have some degree of personal relationship with. Does that change the way you think about how you want the experience to go for them? Are you worried about, oh, we had a bad show that affects my relationship to this person helping me make this show happen?
No.
Because who cares?
Right. Well, I mean, I try, especially with Pandemonium, it happens every month. So I try to force myself not to pay attention to how any one show went. If it's constantly not going well, then maybe I would pay attention to maybe trying to make some changes. But everyone has a bad show. That the trend really matters in that. So like I pick people to host my events that I know, like, that I trust them to do that, and it's such a very quick business interaction, 1 hour or 1 evening per month, that I don't think friend complications are really that much of a hazard.
Well, I hosted the Beard Off, and we're not friends anymore. So it's rough. That's not true, guys. We were never friends. I'm curious, because you mentioned the show not going well.
Yeah.
All four of you, I'm certain, have failed in some way, shape, or form. And because you are doing work that matters to you, that usually means it impacts you in a different way than, oh, I screwed up a spreadsheet at a job I don't care about. Like, that's not awesome, but it doesn't feel the same as I did something that I cared about and it didn't work out. And it also probably impacts people in your lives, whether it be you need to make money to support them or they work with you. So I wonder how you guys think about failure in your work and failure in your personal relationships, and if those two things interact with one another. Small question.
I'm first.
Sure.
It's definitely an impact. I was homeless. I think I failed in my career twice, and I failed in life once when I was homeless. I was recently homeless, and it definitely made an impact. But at the same time, it gave me a greater understanding of the capabilities I have as a human being, and the support system I have in my wife. My wife, Lord knows, she's my rock, similar to what Reggie was saying. She's like, without that support system, as Art said, it's hard. So it's definitely a situation there.
So how did you navigate that relationship? Like, how has the homelessness, the coming back from homelessness too, how has that affected your dynamic with your work and with your family?
I'm still trying to juggle that. But the dynamics has changed is me putting more work into my family than what I was doing with my creativity. Because in a sense, I feel going towards my creativity, in a sense, it made me homeless because I was not focusing on my family, thinking this is where it's supposed to be at because this is my bread. This is what bringing in the bread for the household. But at the same time, it wasn't securing everything at home. So that gave me a sense of where I need to put my mental stability at, and that's my foundation, that's home.
Who else likes to talk about failure?
I used to not ever want to talk about failure. I actually didn't even accept that I could fail or that there was such a thing as failure. I really didn't like the idea of failure. It felt like you could always talk around it. I started a magazine when I was in my 20s, a local sort of creative platform here in the Twin Cities, and I had to fold it after 2 years, almost 3 years. And if people ask me, well, did the magazine fail? I would say, no, it didn't fail. It just didn't work out. I was young. I made business mistakes. Everybody else wasn't good at what they were doing. You know, I didn't have the right team. I started it with my friends. All of these other reasons, other than looking at myself and what I did wrong. I did a lot of things wrong. I was a horrible boss. I was a horrible leader. I didn't know what I was doing. I had drive and passion, but in the end it failed. And it took me a long time before I could actually accept that that had failed, and also accept that in that failure, you know, that's when you realize and you change. In terms of how failure, work, and life, several years after the magazine, I went back to school, got my master's, and I ended up starting the gallery that I now run. And this was this huge endeavor that I launched in April of 2012. A month after that, my marriage ended. So I launched this huge business in this building, and then my marriage fell apart. So I had to actually admit the failure of my marriage, and then I started looking at failure in general. So it took something huge and personal, a personal life failure, for me to accept that I could also fail in work.
Who wants to follow homeless and marriage failure, Roger or Arnold?
Well, now that you mention it, no. It's funny, I don't think of failure much, and it's funny being half Japanese. You know, my grandparents immigrated to Honolulu, you know, in late 1800s, and you know they were always pushing my mom, my aunt, all of our relatives, you know, pretty hard. It's just, you know, it's just kind of just the way it is, I guess, you know, to achieve and keep moving forward. So I don't know if that influenced me, but I just never thought about failure. If something didn't work out, I was like, well, I'm going to learn everything I can from this, and I'm going to just keep marching on, you know, and it kind of all the way through college and graduate school. My first job, I had a corporate job, industrial psychologist at Lockheed Martin. So it's like a cush job, but I hated it. It's like, how did I end up doing this? And yet even then it was like, well, you know, I had all these other things. I always wanted to build things. I loved to garden. My grandparents were big orchid gardeners, growers in Honolulu. They were kind of famous for it. So it was like, gosh, this is in my blood. I should just do this. You know, and so I felt like I could always do something, right? I could always make it happen somehow. And yet I failed at many things. I mean, we've had many businesses up and down, you know, it's just like, oh my gosh, we just missed it completely. And yet then you'll see a thread that'll go to the next thing, and then the next thing, the next thing, and so you waste nothing. And one of the biggest influences has been my father-in-law, who is a very successful big builder in the Twin Cities, a lot of places you've eaten at and bought gas at. I mean, he's built a lot of stuff in the Twin Cities. He's retired now, but he always just told me when, you know, there was a downside to something or when something wasn't going right, It's like, don't spend about half a second on it, learn what you can and move on. I don't want to hear about it again, ever. And it's like been so influential to me. You know, when you had those times in 2008, we lost a boatload of money when the economy went down, and we're connected to a lot of big projects. And I mean, we were almost bankrupt. I mean, we were just crushed. But we just said, okay, what can we do? What do we do? Need to do more of, better, differently, and move forward. And then we started to kind of crawl out, and now we have some opportunities that can't even believe, you know, some cool stuff. And being here, it's, you know, really a blessing to be interconnected with Giant Steps.
I think it's funny you said waste nothing, and your building company has a bunch of green and eco-focus, where you're, again, not trying to waste anything and reuse it. Sort of a theme that I've found.
I mean, trying to be sustainable just with life, because life is just absolutely chaotic, changing. Markets change, opportunities come, they go. But you got to be ready, and you got to, you know, be open, you know, to tackle things. I mean, we're going after stuff like almost more than ever. And we're cautious. I mean, one thing about failure and in terms of business relationships, I guess, is a caution. I mean, we have just a big, long list of financial deals we've had with other people. And that's one of the trickiest things. Some of the surest things have been the worst things. Whenever it's involved either a little bit of money or a lot of money, man, you got to be so careful if it's not family. Because it just turns on a dime, and what you thought was perfect, all of a sudden you're getting sued, or someone falls off, or they start changing the dynamics of the relationships, or they walk away and you're left trying to run a business. So yeah, that was just a little comment on a previous question.
Yeah, no, that's great.
But great. It's just something that, as young or old entrepreneurs, small business owners, it's partnerships generally are not really great. Well, and statistically, it's a proven fact. It's a fact.
You're gonna make Susan punch me in the mouth. The message of this is partnerships are not great. Down with collaboration.
If you can do it on your own, do it on your own. But
I agree.
It's tricky. I'm just saying.
Nero, did you have something?
Yeah, it was something he said based on when you fail, just go right ahead and try to attack the failness by progressing. Because most people, when they fail, they drown themselves in their sorrow, and that eliminates them to try to succeed to what they need to accomplish. So I mentioned that in my book, matter of fact, that when you in the situation, don't kill yourself about what the problem that you're in. Just go right ahead and try to execute it instead of, because some people all have bill problems. Like my parents, when they have bill problems, growing up, my mom's stressed until the bill is paid. But it's like, why stress yourself? That energy that you're producing is going all over the house. So we all feeling that negative energy. So with that being said, don't kill yourself if you're failing. Just try to clean your mind and execute the situation at hand.
Yeah, why be broke and upset?
It's not gonna mix. It's not gonna mix.
Did you have something, Art?
Yeah, both a professional and personal failure.
Awesome.
Combo. One of the things I did last year was this past year is build this immersive starship set for Riddle Room. And it's the sort of seed of this project started in, I want to say like June of 2014. And I was going to have a friend of mine, mistake number one, who lived in Seattle, mistake number two, design and build the whole thing in Minneapolis, combo mistake. And he's also a very good friend of mine, and we had been friends since like 10th grade. And so we talked through all of this, mostly over like Facebook chat, but also on the phone a lot. And when it came like time for business, and I should preface this by saying he had done a lot of graphic design work for me, and so at this point we thought we had a good business relationship because he was very good at graphic design and knew me very well, so he could give me a poster or a logo for a project without, with just a few words from me about like, I want it kind of like this, and then he'd give me exactly what I wanted because he knew me so well. And so I thought, okay, this is smart. Working with this guy is going to be really good. And then it came about this time last year when we were trying to figure out, all right, what are the financials? And it then was like a week, and then it just fell right apart. And both professionally and like, we used to talk all the time, and we still don't really talk that much anymore. We're not angry at each other anymore, but just the relationship completely changed, and I'm very sad about it, and I'm sure he's very sad about it. And if either of us made any sort of effort, I'm sure we could change that. But
well, here he is.
But it's one like relationships like that are often, and I don't mean this pejoratively, but they're often based on habit. Like that's the person you go to talk to when you have this sort of thought, and when you get out of that habit, you just don't think to talk to that person anymore. And so that I feel I failed that relationship by even just initiating that conversation of we should work together on this project. I should have had much better sense than that, and I didn't. And that's it ended up being actually a complete blessing in disguise, because then I got hooked up with Bedlam Theater, their community design center, and they created something that was better than I ever could have imagined. And so, but it would not have happened that way had the timing not worked out, and the timing wouldn't have worked out had I not thought I had someone else until like October of last year. So, yeah, that's failure just spun right into accidental success, I suppose.
It's always like that.
Well, you mentioned timing, and Tricia, even you mentioning you got this public functionary launched, and then there was some personal wreckage in the path. And I'm assuming some of that was time management. If you put all your time and energy one place, something's probably being underserved. And I'm guessing there's a lot of people here who are always wrestling with, how do I structure my time? How do I schedule it? What does it look like? Do I schedule it? Do I just let things happen? Or do I have to be really on top of everything? Or is there some fun middle ground? So I would love to hear from any and all of you how you think about time management. Do you think about time management?
I want to hear from her too. I'm trying to figure this out.
Could you help kNERO with time management?
Because I need it.
I'm not an expert on time management at all. I'm a procrastinator, so obviously I fail at time management. Although I work really well under pressure, so maybe not. Isn't that the classic excuse? I don't know. I think one of the ways that I've learned to come to terms with time management is that I can only focus on the task at hand, or the moment that I'm in. So if I have a lot going on and I have to go to my friend's baby shower, and I know that as soon as I leave that baby shower, I have a million things on my to-do list, I can't think about them. I have to be there enjoying the time with my friends. If I need to prepare for something I'm speaking at, but I have meetings at the gallery, I need to just focus on that thing. If I am driving to the store, I need to just drive to the store.
That's a huge one, because then we're not all crashing.
So one thing at a time, Yeah. And I'm practicing it. I'm trying to just realize that my to-do list is always going to be full. There's always going to be a million things, but I can only do what I'm doing in that moment. And I start to compartmentalize that with days as well. And when I know my week is crazy, I just focus on, okay, I'm teaching tonight. So today is about preparing for class. Tomorrow I'll be responding to emails. It's one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, and that's the way I manage it.
I want to hear from you guys too, but do you have to fight that in your brain to not jump ahead? Like,
yeah.
Is it a constant?
Yeah.
Do you have a trick? Or? This is for Nero. How do you?
It's just trying to be as conscious as possible about it and reminding myself that I don't have a million hands, I don't have a million brains, I have to do only one thing at a time. I wish I did have a million brains.
That's a little creepy, but yeah.
It's a practice. And I wouldn't say I'm absolutely successful at it, but it's definitely bringing me some sanity in my life right now.
What about you guys?
Yeah. So, like, right this very minute, I am represented in 3 different places. And, like, I should be at all 3 of them, but I'm here, and so I can't think about the other 2. I'm supposed to be setting up a riddle room right now for a group that comes at 4 o'clock. My wife is doing that. I also have a booth over at NerdCon on the other side of this convention center that someone else is working for me. And I'm here, and I am doing my very best not to think about any of those other things.
How's it going?
It's very hard.
Is it? Yeah.
And then, of course, my phone keeps ringing because people have questions about this stupid Groupon. And like 3 times during this panel, I've had to stop my phone from vibrating. So it is a very purposeful, intent sort of thing. Like I am choosing to focus on this, and if something enters my mind, I just say nope. I am focusing on this, and like sometimes it is just a matter of like refocusing where I'm looking or changing how I'm sitting, or a physical thing can help get me back in the right where I'm supposed to be mentally right now. So I don't know.
I've been itching to grab my phone. It's vibing like crazy right now.
Yeah, we're all being present. Everyone. Roger, do you have like actual scheduling systems? I mean, I'm sure you do for your clients and your work, but
we have so many different things going on right now, and we probably always have. So it's a little bit chaotic, but I mean, I agree that you really can't, and psychologically, we're not built to multitask. I mean, that was one of the things we studied when I was going to graduate school and at Ames Research Center in San Jose, where they were studying some of the early human dynamics and human performance stuff with astronauts is, can you really multitask? And we can't.
Women can.
Well, women can.
The science is in.
We can do a lot of different things, but we can't do them at the same time. And I realize that even more now when I try to. Then I'll send an email with incorrect information. It's just like mysterious, but you do make a lot of mistakes if you're not focusing on each thing and doing your very best on each thing. And they may be right after each other, but you got to give full attention to each thing, otherwise it's junk. So for me, one of our things now, because we have so many things, we have stuff going on in Florida, we got projects still in Guam, is this, we do little bits, and we do them like really thoroughly, and then that's it. Then we go to the next thing, then the next thing, and then if there's something else that maybe is on the horizon, we'll just focus on it, deal with it, and then start back on the list again.
If you guys have questions, stick a hand up, and there's a microphone there, and it will move towards you magically through the power of walking, and we'll take some of those questions. There's lots of hands. That's fantastic. You guys are compelling. Good work.
Hi. So I guess my comment is more of a comment and not so much of a question, but I'm curious about the role that gender plays in this conversation. So I'm a wife and a mother of a 15-month-old, and I just launched my business. And that causes a lot of tension at home. So my husband is trying to be supportive and do the best and look after the baby and all of that good stuff and support what I'm doing. And I listen to the panel conversation and I see 3 guys talk about how great their wives are and how supportive their wives have been. And then I hear Tricia's comment about launching her project and then losing her relationship. And I wonder if that's a coincidence or if that's something that all women struggle with, is the expectation when you are a wife or a mother that, more of a traditional, those pulls on you as a woman, and how difficult it is to be everything to everyone. And is it possible to have it all, I guess, is my question. Please say yes, Tricia, someone.
I think I'm probably the best person to speak to that. Well, you are the woman here, so now you have to speak for all women.
You know, I don't know if it's possible to have it all, and to be honest, that's something that I'm struggling with right now as an entrepreneur. My marriage ended because my husband's career took off before mine. He's also a creative entrepreneur. He's a touring DJ and producer, and a couple years, well, actually instantly after we got married, his career took off, and he started touring. The assumption was that I was going to move with him, and around the time that that was supposed to happen, a lot of opportunities started making sense for me. Things were clicking, and I started my business here, and so I decided not to move to Europe with him. So I made a decision to pursue my career and also allow him to pursue his career. So things fell apart. We separated, but have recently in the last couple years been trying to rework and see if we can find a way to salvage our marriage. We currently live in 2 apartments in 2 different cities. So I've reformed my marriage in order to make it work. One of the things that has happened as a result of that is that I don't have children. It's something that I want. I'm 36 years old, and so the clock is ticking. I don't know. I ask myself that probably every other day. Am I actually going to have a family? I don't know. I often am jealous of women that have already had children, but then they're jealous of me because I don't. So I think it's always up to you and the choices that you make, and I just keep thinking that I'm where I'm at for a reason. So things will happen as they should.
So I am an entrepreneur, have my own business. My wife and I have an 8.5-month-old baby, and she is the head of her department at her job.
Your baby?
Yeah, my baby. My baby has 15 employees. My wife has 15 employees, and her company was acquired by Samsung last year, and she has been essentially growing her own little mini company. Fucking phone. And has had to have, you know, the same sort of like 15, 16-hour day things that I have. And what ends up happening is when a person can help, they do. And so if she needs to be at work until 9 at night, I just hang out with the baby. And if I need to be at work until 9 at night, she hangs out with the baby. And when I travel, you know, whatever, she takes the baby, and when she travels, I take the baby. And it's not a, I think we are lucky because we really value each other as peers and as partners, and don't keep score, so to speak. And so it will never, I would never say, well, you know, I've had the baby by myself 15 times, and you have only had the baby by yourself 13 times, so I think I am owed 2 times. You know, it's nothing like that. It's just you step up when you can, and when both of you need someone to step up, you find a babysitter. Whether that's to spend a day reconnecting, which is important, or, you know, if you're both traveling or whatever, because like it almost happened that on Monday my wife was going to go to Korea for a week, and I have to travel to Madison to do Pandemonium, and the baby does not make that trip. So, you know, we had plans in place, but then the Korea thing got canceled. So, but it's going to happen again in a couple weeks. So, yeah, you just you make it work, I guess.
I want to take more questions, but I also just want to, because this is a really important issue to me, and my wife is, and I hope always will be, way busier and more successful than I am. Also smarter, funnier, more attractive. And in the room.
Where is she? Where is she?
She's the pretty one over there. But I just want to say, if a mom works a full-time job and loves her work and is really busy, that's fucking great. And if a mom has a lot of time to be home with their kid and loves it, that's fucking great too. And if you're a mom, you're killing it. You think you're failing and you're totally killing it right now. I just need to say that because I don't think that can be said too many times. No matter what the shape of your parenthood looks like, you know how to do your parenting. You know how to do it. So just try to remind yourself of that because it's easy to lose sight of that, especially when you're exhausted and you have like a 15-month-old. You haven't slept in 15 months, and you're just not thinking rationally. You're not even aware of how good you're doing with things that no one, even though tons of humans have done it, it's ridiculous, the idea that we're trying to make a person stay alive. That's absurd. But let's have more questions, because that's just my thing.
Yes, we are all killing it as parents.
Metaphorically.
Metaphorically. This is, I guess, on theme or kind of related, but so I'm a solo artist, designer, entrepreneur. I work with myself, but my husband runs a business as an entrepreneur and has over 70 employees, and we're oriented very differently. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have like I joke that he's like genetically incapable of feeling like cynicism and seeing the downside. He's just optimistic all the time, and you have to be kind of because you have to push through. And when I see things in that his business totally dominates our lives, and when there's setbacks, I'm really affected by that, and I really he starts saying, like, I don't want to tell you what's going on because I don't want to stress you out because that stresses me out. So I'm just wondering if there's different, if people in your family or close relationships to you react differently than you do to the risks and pressures and stresses of being an entrepreneur and how you've navigated that, because obviously I try to be as supportive, art's relationship. It sounds a lot like our relationship, but like it's still the thing where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to show how I want to scream into the void right now. I'm just going to go do it in the other room and not tell him. So I'm just curious if you guys have that dynamic and how you've managed it.
Nero, the void?
This sounds like marriage counseling right now. I swear. I feel like I'm being helped in my marriage right now. Because my wife does that. I know she does, but she don't tell me. Because I ask her, what's wrong? She's like, oh, nothing. Because I'm always out of the house, always. I'm always doing something. I get home all the time around 9 o'clock, and I'm leaving the house around 7. And when I get home, I want to go in the studio immediately. So she always asks me, she tells me, you've been away from me for like 8 to 12 hours. When do I get the time? So I have to let the creativity go and try to, you hear that vibrating?
Yeah, it's nice.
So I get the...
It's your wife right now?
I hope not.
When's my time? Is it about... Oh, it's about Groupon. It's a Groupon question.
Another sale.
Yeah.
What was your question again?
Well, whether you protect your partner or your personal relationships from your stress.
I definitely protect my wife, and she protects me as well, because she hides it. Me personally, I don't get too stressed out. Like, I use the method of not caring, shall I say. I swear, growing up, my siblings would tell me, Nero think he's all that. He doesn't care about nothing. It's not that I don't care. It's like I mentioned before, what am I going to do at hand if the situation is occurring? Can't do nothing about it. So let me just try to strategize what I can do to execute the problem. So I don't dwell on situations that's negative. Negative energy has to stay over there or over there. I don't want it around me. So I use the method of not caring.
What about the rest of you guys?
Well, I think with myself and my husband both being driven creative entrepreneurs, there's always this struggle of who needs to be taken care of. Because it would be great to just always be able to come home and have somebody cooking me dinner and taking care of all of the issues, but he needs that as well. So when we actually are in the same city at the same time, one of the things that we try and practice is just this idea of, at the end of the day when we're together, taking an assessment of who had a worse day. So who needs that support that day? And then the other person has to be like, okay, I have to set it back. It's going to be her day, or it's going to be, and just trying to sense that, because either way, it's just a struggle for attention constantly, because you're both on your hustle, you're doing your thing, and you need that attention. So that's the only way that we've been able to deal with double the stress in the same partnership.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, you know, it just keeps coming. You know, when you're in business for yourself versus when I was at Lockheed Martin, checks are coming. It's a whole different level of stress. You have corporate stress and hierarchies, and when you're hustling on your own, you know, you're not getting paid if you're not delivering something, or you're not producing something, or not coming up with the next idea, or making a phone call before the day is out, which is almost that time, so I gotta make some phone calls. But no, I mean,
Art's sweating right now.
I know, he's got all these people trying to buy from him. But no, you're hustling, and so it's just like a wave after wave that just keeps coming, and so you know, we try to kind of hear what's on each other's hearts. But my tendency is to focus on net forward energy. That's kind of our buzzword, which is, you know, we just talk about a problem. I don't want to hear about the problem. I want to hear about what can we do more of, better, differently. So we say that all the time, because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I've heard the problem, or I heard how terrible this was, or I know what can I do more of, better, or differently. And it's not ignoring it or diminishing the feelings, but it's positioning us so that, because I can't operate, you know, when you're in a creative mode, and even though we're builders, we deal with kind of concrete things and, you know, producing a result, you know, we're still creative, and,
yeah.
and that negativity just kills creativity. So, I mean, I've got to stay in a good place.
Okay, I want to take one more question just to make Art more anxious about where he has to be. Who has one? Is there one good? Somebody else has a good? I know it's a final question that's very anxious. No? Yeah.
As far as, like, you know, deciding things to cut out of your life, you know, if you get to a point where you're just like, okay, I just can't do all this. If you have any situations where you're just like, okay, this just has to go. I can't do this anymore. It doesn't have to be anything really traumatic or anything. I'm just talking like.
Yeah, I have. So the emotional energy, you know, is it worth the emotional energy that you're putting into it? And the example that I am in the process of just sort of letting go is the very first event I ever started, the Minnesota Beard Off. It's a very small contingent, but there's a group within, and this is real, there's a group within the bearding community that sort of acts as the self-righteous gatekeeper group. And if you're not producing your competition in such a specific way and giving everything you've made to charity, even what might have covered your expenses or your time, then they'll like boycott your event. And it's happened to me. And I started it because I wanted to have this fun, silly event. And once it stopped becoming fun and silly, and I had to like navigate the politics of this community, I thought, you know, there are so many other communities in the work, the other work that I'm doing, that are just excited to embrace me and what I'm doing, and are not trying to change who I am or what I'm doing, that I don't have time for the rest of that, you know, politics garbage. So, yeah, that's emotional energy, I suppose, is the gauge for me.
Anybody else have to drop anything?
I drop people out of my life. Negativity, once again. As I mentioned in my book, we as people, we get blinded by titles. Mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, whatever the case may be. And with those titles, we don't see that they can be wrong. And we, especially as parents is our superhero. So mom and dad could say anything and we will cling to it because that's mom and dad. But sometimes we have to sit back and understand that mom and dad could be wrong, and you're living your life now, especially if you're living your life for your kids. You got to make your own decisions for yourself and your children. Even though mom and dad raised you and you take those duties that they embedded into you, but at the same time, you have to separate yourself from that title. And I learned that while I was homeless and as being a parent, because mom and dads, they know everything, allegedly, when you're in your own shell, but you're growing for yourself and you're growing for your children if you have kids. So I threw away negative friends. Not saying they're not in my life, but I know where to place them in my life if I want them in my life.
Awesome. Well, we are out of time, but I really want to say thanks to Art, Roger, Tricia, and kNERO. You guys have been fantastic. Let's clap for these guys. They're awesome.